how do you set goals for your team? Hi everyone, and welcome back to another mock interview with Exponent. Today we're here with Shri. Shri, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Happy to be here. And hi, everyone. My name is Sri. I serve as the head of data infrastructure at Robinhood. And my role is mostly an engineering management role. My role is to support the organization, support the career development of people, help make sure that we're building good strategy towards supporting internal teams and customers at Robinhood. So to give you all a quick overview, data infrastructure's mission is to build foundational data platforms, which are then used by the rest of the company. So most of the work involves working with big data technologies, building the right foundational tools and platforms, which are leveraged by engineers, data scientists, and analysts across the entire company. I joined Robinhood last year, and prior to joining Robinhood, I spent about 8 years at Yelp, which is where I started my career as a fledgling new grad after grad school. Got a wonderful opportunity there to grow as an engineer before moving into a management role, setting up the data platform team there and kind of growing that over time. So I've mostly been in the platform and infrastructure space, which is something that I enjoy doing, and been in a management role for about 5 or 6 years so far.
That sounds fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing that with us, Shri. You're here with us today for an engineering management mock interview. And my first question to you is, how do you set goals for your team?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think it's one of the more important things that engineering managers have to do. So maybe I can walk through a high-level kind of philosophy and approach and how I think about it, and then maybe share some examples. Does that sound good?
That sounds good.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, so the way I think about this is, in order to set goals for your team, you need to get inputs from the right places. So how I think about inputs are need to get some inputs from senior leadership. Maybe there are initiatives that the company wants to drive or the organization wants to drive, taking that as an input. Taking an input from your team's customers. So for me, kind of being part of a internal platform team, our team's customers are other teams within the company. So getting a sense of what they want, what they're looking for, what are the challenges that they're facing, taking that as an input. And then the third input I would say is from your team. So in my case, that would be kind of engineers and managers in my team who have a lot more context there. Their ears are on the ground. They have a good understanding of where the skeletons are hidden in the closet, where there are big tech debt items that we need to tackle, and kind of take those inputs. The idea is to kind of collect all of these inputs and use them as part of the planning process. So that's kind of the high level philosophy. To break that down with a concrete example, let's take the example of the recent planning cycle that I've been through in terms of setting goals for the team. So once I kind of gathered all of these inputs, so I gathered inputs from senior leadership, purely by asking them, and some of these get transmitted down from the company. So that's kind of the easy one. The second one is getting feedback from customers. So one of the things that my team does is we send out periodic surveys to all of our customers, and we ask questions like, hey, what features would you like to suggest for our platforms? Or we ask questions like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely would you be to recommend this platform to another team, and try to take that as an input. So we get a survey results, and we look at the survey results together as a team, and then try to determine which of those we should prioritize. And as for inputs from the team, I do a similar process. I send out a survey to my team, asking people to suggest ideas, upvote ideas, and we go through a collaborative brainstorming session. And once all of these ideas are collected, if I'm directly managing a team, I'm kind of the point person. But if I have other managers or leads, I usually ask them to drive that process, where we put all of these data together in one single spreadsheet, and then try to stack rank the priorities based on our intuition, our judgment, and the data that we've gathered. And once we've kind of stack ranked the priorities, we then try to determine how much of these can actually be meaningfully be done by the team. And so, that's a little bit of a mixture of an art and science, I would say, because, the science part is we can, estimate the size of those projects by asking the team, by asking the engineers who are closest to the problem.
Mm.
But there's also a lot of uncertainty with estimation, like especially with projects that we've never worked on. So we have to bake in some buffer there. And
Yeah.
then based on that, then try to determine how much can the team meaningfully do, and add a little bit extra as a stretch goal in order to kind of motivate the team to push themselves. And then
Mm-hmm.
once this is done, you kind of have a roadmap for the team. And depending on the company, some companies follow an OKR format. So we try to use objectives and key results. Some teams follow a roadmap format. So depending on the company and kind of the nature of the process, some of this might vary, but that's generally the process I tend to follow.
Got it. And then, so you mentioned that you follow some criteria for prioritizing these things that you rank in your spreadsheet, right? What are some examples of the criteria that you consider other than complexity of the project?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So the way I think about this is prioritization rubrics are closely tied to KPIs for the team. So for example, the KPIs or key performance indicators for data infrastructure would be reliability, scalability, security, and we have specific metrics measuring that. So what we
Mm.
try to do when we come up with these projects is try to determine which of those metrics these projects are intended to move. So for example, if we have a project to add some more access control features on some of the infrastructure that we're building,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to improve our security KPI. Or if we have a project that our customers have asked for, that is going to make their lives easier, we're probably moving a customer satisfaction metric. So just trying to
Mm-hmm.
determine which of these metrics or KPIs these projects are moving, and then determining kind of a portfolio of them. At least in my experience, I feel like it's very hard to objectively stack rank everything that the team does,
Yeah.
but it's useful to think of it from the lens of prioritizing them into buckets. So maybe we want to take a portfolio where we say, in the last cycle or in the last year, we built a lot of innovative features, but maybe accrued a lot of tech debt. So the portfolio of reliability projects will be higher,
Mm.
and we might allocate a 60% portfolio to that, as opposed to 20% or 30%. So I think of it from the perspective of portfolio, assigning these projects to these portfolios, having some percentage allocation for them, and then within each of these portfolios, trying to rank these projects based on uh, how how likely they are to move the metrics that we care about.
Mm.
Some of them are very data driven. Some of them are intuition driven. We don't always get it right. Like I make mistakes here all the time, and kind of learn from it retrospectively.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned that tech debt is definitely something that you consider when you're prioritizing your work, and then it kind of depends on just how did the previous half go, how much tech debt did you actually build up. So let's say you're in a half when there's a lot of tech debt, and you have to really prioritize that, move a lot of projects up to the forefront. P zeros have a lot to do with just cleaning up some of that code. How do you motivate your engineers when a half is looking like it's not really going to be very product or other KPI oriented, and it's going to be very tech debt oriented?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm smiling because this kind of hits home. It's
I'm an engineer, so I really want to know how you answer this question.
this is very real. I think one a common mistake that a lot of people make, including myself, and I have made this mistake before in the past, is to not communicate the truth to the team. Engineers are smart. Like everybody that we hire is smart. That's the assumption that I go with, and people deserve to know the truth. In the past, I've made a mistake where I try to sugarcoat things. I say, hey, it's fine. We'll do some exciting things, but people can see through BS, and so I think it's just really important to be honest, because
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, most people. I'm not saying this is true for everybody, but most people want to do work that is impactful to the company, to the organization, and also they want to learn new skills along the way.
Mm.
Going by that logic, my approach usually is first communicate the truth, like, hey, like, this is why we are prioritizing this. We have lots of tech debt, and if we don't address it right now, this is going to cause a lot of pain to us in the future. And try to connect the tech debt to the impact that it will have on the team if we don't address it. So, for example,
Mm.
if we don't address the tech debt in a timely manner, the on-call burden on the team might increase, and people on the team might feel more miserable in the long term. So
Yeah.
tying it back to what it means for the company and what it means for the team and for individuals on the team is helpful. And then also communicating the fact that some of this work might be interesting for some people, some of this work might not be interesting for some people. So I think that's where I try to balance project interests with people's career growth interests. So for example, a tech debt removal might be, let's say there's a project to um, uh, upgrade a particular library, and then probably the previous library has a lot of bugs and tech debt. We just want to upgrade it to a new version. Most people think it's a very boring thing to do, but there might be people on the team for whom this is a great learning opportunity to learn something new, and this might be a good fit for them. So trying to figure out the right project person fit can also help there. And then the third thing, I kind of communicate kind of the realistic picture that for us to be a sustainable team in the long term, we don't want to be tackling tech debt all the time. So if we do a really good job in this cycle, in this half, we should be decreasing the portfolio of time that we spend on tech debt so that we spend more time on exciting products and features. So it's never an easy conversation. I may have made it sound as if it's a playbook and you can just run through it. It's never an easy conversation, but I think
Yeah.
it boils down to just being honest with people and having this conversation about priorities and impact it has on them and it has on the business.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. Yeah, I think that as an engineer, I think that sounds great. I would always like to hear, honestly, just what is the situation this half? How much work are we going to have to do on tech debt, and have that upfront rather than try to guess, where the team's at. My last question for you is: at some point in your first answer, you were talking about stretch goals, or you just touched on it lightly. So I'm curious, how do you evaluate when something is a stretch versus just, a goal, like anything else?
Yeah, excellent question. The way I think about it is when we do kind of capacity planning for our projects and try to determine the process that I tend to follow is like a t-shirt size estimate where we say, is this project a small, medium, large, extra large, and then try to associate some notion of, person weeks or some estimate of that nature. And then we'll have a high level capacity for the team based on the number of people on the team. So if there are, 8 people on the team, it's um, 32 person weeks in a month and so on. So trying to kind of use that as the capacity estimate, and then try to do a kind of a rough comparison of how much can we meaningfully take on given the capacity that we know on the team, and anything that's beyond that is quote unquote stretch because it's probably unlikely that we'll be able to finish it. Finish those things within the designated time frame, and so I specifically like to call those out. Or basically, we as a team like pick out a couple of them from that list, like from the projects that kind of fall beyond the cut line, and specifically call them out as stretch because we don't want to communicate to our customers that we are going to, finish this and commit to this because that would be perhaps signing up the team for too much. But at the same time, we don't want to be a team that is complacent or sits pretty on the goals that we've set. We want to aspire to keep doing more and more because A, that is healthy for the company because we want to drive more value to the company, and B, it's healthy for people on the team because the more impact that people have on the team, it helps them grow their careers too. So from that lens, I work with my tech leads or engineers who are most familiar with the area to pick 2 or 3 of these initiatives or projects that are beyond our capacity, but we call them as stretch goals. I want to make sure, before I actually communicate that in OKRs or whatever format that the company uses, I want to make sure I get that sign off from the team because I don't want to be the person who just arbitrarily signs up for stretch goals. So I usually float
Yeah.
that back to the team and say like, hey, these are a couple of things, I'm interested in calling out as a stretch goal. Does this make sense? And then once I get kind of the buy-in from the team, we call that out. And the idea with stretch goals is those are kind of aspirational projects for people or members on the team who want to do more kind of beyond the things that have been signed up on the team. And so sometimes we're able to hit stretch goals in my experience, sometimes we're not. But the times
Mm-hmm.
we're able to hit our stretch goals, I think it's a good indicator to me that the team is like performing well, and we should keep moving that in subsequent quarters and subsequent halves.
Yeah. As a follow up to that, so what do you do when you don't meet your goals, whether they're stretch or not? There are times when goals aren't met. What do you do then?
Yeah, great question. It happens. It happens often in certain projects. My approach there is, just try to, first of all, try to anticipate that early on.
Mm-hmm.
Some projects it's easier to anticipate. I have, the team has a bi-weekly sprints, or I have weekly check-ins with the project leads. So I keep kind of asking questions on, are we on track? Like, are we at risk? So some of these things we may be able to anticipate, and if we're able to anticipate, I basically either myself or through a project lead, like, communicate that to our stakeholders and say, hey, this project is at risk, and this is why it's at risk, and providing that context.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that risk can be mitigated by cutting scope or by adding more people, but in some cases, maybe that's not possible. And those are kind of the easy ones, right? The harder ones are when you don't anticipate them and you just fall short in the end, and it happens sometimes.
Yeah.
I think in those situations, it's important, to approach it from a blameless perspective, and to do a very honest retrospective to see, what went wrong. Did we go wrong in estimation? Did we go wrong in not knowing how complex a particular task is going to be? Where did we go wrong? And I just try to find that and make sure that we learn from that and we don't make the same mistake again.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the goal, at least for me, like, one of the things I strive to do is, like, try to anticipate this as much as possible in advance so that we can course correct. But in cases where we can't, just do an honest retrospective, take away the learnings and apply them next time. Um, I I have this controversial mindset. Some people may not agree with this, but I feel like most deadlines are arbitrary, except when there are a few deadlines that matter, where you have multiple teams coordinating, or there's a big
Yeah.
release that the company owes to a customer. Otherwise, most intermediate deadlines are arbitrary. So as long as we are able to understand why we were slow or why we missed a particular date, and we are able to action on it, I think that's kind of a reasonable next step.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sri. That was fantastic. I have feedback that I'd love to give you, but before I do that, I wanted to ask you to self-reflect, and let me know what you thought.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. I thought the questions were good. I was trying to kind of pick experiences from my past work experiences and trying to communicate that. Um, yeah, I think maybe in some places maybe I talk too long, and so maybe I should pause and then ask the
Mm-hmm.
interviewer to make
Mm-hmm.
sure I'm on the right track. I did that in some places, but in some places I think I ended up talking too long without kind of asking for follow-ups. Um, yeah, otherwise I think it was good. Was able to
Mm-hmm.
kind of get some interesting high level examples. I was trying to figure out how much concrete examples I should share. Given that this is a
Mm-hmm.
mock interview, I held back
Yeah.
from sharing very specific ones, but I was trying to balance that line. So hopefully
Yeah. Yeah.
the points came across.
No, that definitely makes sense. To the first thing you said, where maybe you felt like you talked a little bit too long in some cases. I think yes, maybe in some cases I felt like there were some follow-ups, but then you preemptively answered questions that I would have had later, which I don't think it's terrible to do that as long as you have a clear structure for what you're saying, and I think you did. I was following you throughout. There wasn't any point where I thought like the question was just out of hand, and I didn't remember what I asked you to begin with. So it's a fine line. I think you did fine with just answering the question, giving me good enough structures that I could follow you throughout the process. And what I thought you did particularly well was this was very conversational. It was very easy for me to jump in, ask you follow-ups, and play off some of the stories that you were telling me. And you did the same. I think it was when you treat it like a conversation, it's just a lot easier to be able to convince someone else that you not only have the chops for management but also empathy, which is extremely important when you're dealing with people on a daily basis. Another thing I think you did well was in one of your questions, you admitted a mistake that you thought you made early on. I think this was, remind me, I think this might have been in the how do you motivate your engineers when you know you're going to need to do a lot of tech debt work, right? And I think that's fantastic. Whenever there is a possibility to demonstrate growth because there's something that you didn't know before but you do know now, I think it's a great way to do that and to show that you are capable of growing and learning from your mistakes. So that was really good. In general, just with the structure of your answers, I really appreciated that you started off with philosophy and then you went into just here's an example in practice of a time when this happened. I know this is going to be more specific in a real interview, but I think, yeah, in general, that structure is really good whenever you can use that. So yeah, overall, I thought this was a great interview. I enjoyed talking to you and I felt like I got really good insight into how you work and what your philosophies are. And I hope this was useful for you as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. This was fun, and as someone who as someone who interviews and also as an interviewer, like either ways, it's really hard to get that feedback on how your communication comes across. So I appreciate the notes that you shared because it was really helpful to know from another perspective. What were the things that could change? What were the things that went well? So yeah, that was fun.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us, Shri. This was really fun to do today, and good luck with all your future interviews.
Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons below to let us know that this video was valuable for you. And of course, check out hundreds more videos just like this at tryexponent.com. Thanks for watching and good luck on your upcoming interview.